All right, hey everybody. So what we're going to talk about in this video is how to connect to a virtual machine that has been created on Google Cloud Platform on GCP via SSH. So in our class, what we went through was an example of how to connect to a virtual machine in GCP by clicking the convenient SSH button that exists within the Google console. But what we're going to now walk through is how do we do it using SSH outside of the Google console in a third party or a third party tool or something like our own personal desktop. What we'll walk through here is what an SSH terminal is and sort of what that means. And hopefully by the end of this should be able to kind of fill in some of those blanks. So SSH, short for secure shell, and this is just kind of a fancy way of allowing us to communicate from one computer to another securely. So it's encrypting all of the data that we're sending and receiving. Now, with an SSH connection, we could sometimes connect just using like a good old username and password, but a lot of the systems out there now are trying to shy away from the traditional username and password for a variety of different reasons, and instead opt for using the sort of public-private key pair. So what is a SSH key pair? It's something that we will create on our own computer, where we need to use a little bit of the terminal to create it, and it slightly differs between a Mac and a PC. So in this video, just kind of show you the overall process on my computer, which is a Mac, and then have a separate video for the PC group. But using a terminal command, we create it's two different files, a private file and a public file. And the public key is then something that we will then essentially share with the cloud to let the cloud know that, hey, let's allow whoever the recipient or whoever has this key to potentially connect to this machine that we're trying to connect to. So again, it's a way of kind of forming this like virtual handshake of security, saying, if it looks like this person, let's let them in. If this person trying to connect, doesn't have this key, let's make sure that they can't connect. So first step in our sort of terminal, again, if you're on a Mac, this is what it's going to look like. If it's on a PC, it's going to look slightly different, is we are going to create a public key pair. So the part of the sort of command here, just to sort of break it down, so SSH keygen, that is the program that we're going to be using. Then we're saying we're going to create a specific type of, let me go back into preview mode there, I double clicked. We're going to create a specific type of an SSH key called RSA. We're not going to need to know, or we're not going to go into the details, but essentially that just means that that's the type of cryptography program that is being used to encrypt the data. And then this part here, squiggly line / SSH Hans_GCP. So that's a location, that's like a kind of default location on your computer, .ssh, where these public and private keys are saved. So where I have Hans_GCP, that is going to be the sort of name of the key. So you could call it whatever you want, Jane Doe GCP, maybe add in GCP just so you know that you're using this for GCP. And then the capital C needs to be capital C, lowercase Hans at the end. The Hans is going to be the username associated with this key. So when we create our virtual machine in just a minute or two, we'll then also create a new user. And we will then say allow that user which we will create in a few minutes, to use this public key to allow them to access this new virtual machine without having to use a password. So the whole idea is that these private and public keys act as a way of providing a password without having to manually type one in. So just to show you guys what this potentially then looks like. So here inside my terminal, I'll make this a little bit bigger here for us. We'll type in SSH keygen, TRSAF, SSH, and then here maybe I'm just going to call this GCP key. And then the fake user that I'll create is maybe some user called, let's create a user called John. So once we hit enter, it's going to ask us for some additional information, which we don't need to provide. We don't need to provide a passphrase if we don't want to, and then we'll hit enter. So what this is then done, so this is kind of like the sort of, secret password, the sort of machine readable password that we'll then use to authenticate ourselves. So if I were to cd into this SSH folder, we will see here that there's going to be both a private and a public version of the key. Which one's private and which one's public? The one that ends in .pub, that's public. The one that is just GCP key, that's the private key, which we never share with anybody. So what we're going to then do is this next command here, pb copy. What that does is it's a special kind of terminal function that allows us to copy whatever the information is that lives inside of a particular file. So it's kind of like, select all copy, if we were to think about a sort of command like that. So, and we're going to do this because we then need to, what did I call this one? GCP key.pub. So, we need to do this because we're copying this because we're going to then provide that information to our sort of project in the Google Cloud Platform under a settings view to let it know that, like, hey, if we create a virtual machine, let's allow someone with this account to be able to log in. So if we go to console, I'll make sure that I am in Stony Brook one for right now. Select a project. Now within this project, let me move my face up here a little bit. We are going to go to Compute Engine. And then within Compute Engine, I believe down here towards the bottom, we have this settings. So when we click into settings, we're going to see a few different things here. I'm not seeing the one setting that I want to see. Metadata, sorry, it's under metadata. So under metadata, there is this section called SSH keys. So here is where we will want to add in a SSH key to enable, say, someone with the name of, what do we call this? The name of John, I believe, to be able to, so a user John to be able to connect to a future virtual machine that we potentially create. So here then, I'm going to hit add item, and then I'm going to paste in what we had copied using that pb copy command. So once we've done that, I'm going to hit save. That will take us a couple seconds, saving SSH keys. Great. So once that has been done, we will now say potentially we could sort of go into a virtual machine. And let me just, for the sake of giving a full tutorial here, let's create a brand new instance. I'm just going to leave all of the default name and stuff I will make it a slightly smaller one, just so we can bring down the cost there. We will also change the operating system. Like what I've said before, sometimes what we'll be doing, easier to use Ubuntu. So we'll select Ubuntu. Could allow some HTTP and HTTPS traffic, and then everything else we'll just leave the same, and we'll hit create. Okay. So now in order for us to use the SSH key, what we're going to do is we are going to then create a new user called John inside of this instance once it gets up and running. So let's just give this another second, and while that is thinking, so what we'll do once the instance has been created, we will just log in using the SSH button in the Google Cloud Console, and then we're going to type in sudo add user John, since that's the name of the user that we've created to be able to use this SSH key with on a machine that's within this project. So let's see if this is great. So this machine is now live. Let's hit that SSH button here. We'll authorize this. Might take a second, and then we should be into this new machine. Great. Oh, I got my cat locks on. Okay. So what was it? Sudo add user, and then I wanted to create a user called John. No, user John already exists. Okay, well, if the user John, looks like maybe it automatically created the user for is because of the SSH keys. Very interesting. So I was not aware of that. That's very cool. So let's just close out of this, and we will sort of test and sort of see now if we can log in using John from our computer. So the command here that we're going to use, kind of like before, is SSH. Now we're going to use -I, and then this is going to be to tell this SSH function, this small little program here, where our public key is. So if we just go back to the instructions here quick, and when we do this, we do not need to, it looks like, yeah, we do not need to say .pub. So actually we're providing, looks like, the private key. So we'll provide the location of the private key, and because in this terminal window, where am I located? I'm already in this hidden SSH folder. So I should just be able to type GCP key, and that's going to be the location or the sort of name of the key, followed then by the username of this key, the username that's associated with this key, and then the IP address. So it'll be SSH-I followed by the name of the key, and then John at whatever the IP address is. So for me here, this is our external IP address that's publicly available. So what I'll then do is I will just paste that in here. So SSH-I, GCP key, the key that we created, then John at 34, etc. Hit enter. Again, we might need to do this the very first time. We'll hit yes. Cool. And now we have successfully logged in to this virtual machine outside of the Google console. So what I'll do shortly after this is create a similar version of this video, not the full version, but just of the keygen part, of creating a new public-private key pair on a PC. Now this is a little bit more advanced, right? So if you struggle with this, perfectly fine, as long as you're able to connect to it one way. And again, everyone should be able to hit this button, which is perfectly fine. But sometimes it's nice to learn how to do the same thing 2 or 3 different ways. And this way here kind of closely mimics what we would probably do in a real world environment, where I don't always want to say jump into a web browser to be able to connect to this machine. Sometimes it's easier, right, just to be able to open up a brand new terminal window here and hit a couple buttons, type in some quick code, and you guys can see how quickly I was able to log in there. All right, that's it for this one.